The transport ship touched down on Zenth Prime with barely a sound. The landing pad gleamed under 3 purple suns, its surface made of some crystal that seemed to heal itself whenever a ship landed on it. Jake Morrison stepped off the ramp and squinted in the strange light. His boots made soft clicks on the perfect ground. Around him, alien beings waited in a careful line. They all looked so clean, so perfect. Their skin glowed with health, their clothes had no wrinkles, and not one of them had a single mark or scar anywhere. Jake touched his own face without thinking. The long scar that ran from his left ear to his chin felt rough under his fingers. Ambassador Feltar stepped forward first. The crystalline being was tall and thin, made of what looked like living glass. When he moved, light danced through his body in pretty patterns. "Welcome to Zenth Prime, Captain Morrison. We are honored to meet the human representative." Jake nodded and shook the offered hand. It felt warm despite looking like crystal. "Thank you for having me. Earth is excited about the chance to join the Galactic Council." More aliens came forward to meet him. There was Elder Zixona, who looked like she was made of purple mist that somehow held a solid shape. Director Kethlin had blue skin and 4 arms, each hand holding a different tool that hummed with soft energy. General Fixtar looked the most like a human, except his skin was silver, and his eyes were solid gold. As they walked toward the council building, Jake noticed how they all kept looking at him. Not at his face exactly, but at the marks on it. The burn scar on his neck from the plasma fire on Mars Station. The 3 parallel lines across his forehead from the Void Crawler attack. The missing tip of his left ear from shrapnel during the mining wars. The council building was huge and white, with walls that seemed to glow from the inside. Everything was smooth and flowing, like it had been grown instead of built. Inside, the halls were filled with soft music that came from nowhere. The air smelled like flowers Jake had never seen before. "Your ship is very functional," Veltar said as they walked. His voice was like wind chimes. Most species prefer more elegant designs once they reach space travel. Jake thought about the human ship sitting on the landing pad. It was gray and blocky, with patches welded over old battle damage. "It gets the job done. We build things to last." "Yes, we noticed the modifications," Elder Zixona said. Her voice sounded like it came from everywhere at once. "Are those weapons on a diplomatic vessel?" "Just basic defense systems," Jake said. "Space can be dangerous." The aliens shared a look that Jake caught. It was the same look people gave when they saw something they did not understand, something that worried them. They entered the main hall where the welcoming ceremony would happen. The room was so big that Jake could not see the far wall clearly. Hundreds of beings from 12 different species filled floating platforms that hung in the air. Each species sat together, and each looked as perfect and unmarked as the ones Jake had met. The ceremony started with music that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Speakers talked about peace and wisdom and the joy of meeting new friends among the stars. Jake listened and smiled and said the right words when it was his turn, but he could feel them all staring at his scars. When the formal part ended, they moved to a dining area. The table was made of the same glowing crystal as everything else. The food was served by floating trays that moved by themselves. Everything tasted good, though Jake could not name most of what he ate. The conversation was polite at first. The aliens asked about Earth's culture, about human art and music and poetry. Jake answered as best he could, but he could tell they were all thinking about something else. Their eyes kept moving to his face, to his hands, to the scars they could see. Finally, Director Kethlin could not wait any longer. "Captain Morrison, if you do not mind us asking, your appearance is quite different from what we expected." Jake put down his fork. The room got quiet. Even the background music seemed to get softer. "How so?" "Well," Kethlin said, looking uncomfortable, "your people sent images when they first contacted us. But seeing you in person, you have many marks, scars. We were wondering." "You want to know where they came from?" Jake said. Elder Zixona leaned forward. "We do not mean to be rude. It is just that we have never seen such things on a diplomat. On anyone, really. Our healing technology removed such marks long ago, and our gods protect us from harm in the first place. Jake looked around the table. Every face was watching him, waiting for his answer. These beings had never known real pain, real loss, real fear. They had been protected their whole lives by powers that humans had never seen. From wars your gods ignore, he said simply. The words hung in the air like smoke. No one spoke for a long moment. Jake could see confusion on their faces, then worry, then something that might have been fear. I do not understand, Veltar said slowly. The gods protect all thinking beings. They guide us, help us grow, keep us safe. Why would they ignore anyone? Jake picked up his water glass and took a sip. The liquid tasted like starlight if starlight had a flavor. I wish I knew. But humans have been alone since the day we first looked up at the stars. No divine voices, no cosmic protection, no gods answering our prayers when the bombs fell, or the plague spread, or the asteroids came down. But that is impossible, General Fixtar said. His golden eyes were wide. Every species has divine guidance. The Sky Fathers protect the Zephyrians. The Forge Masters teach the Molten clans. Even the smallest civilizations have patron spirits who watch over them. Not us, Jake said. He rolled up his sleeve to show more scars. A plasma burn here, claw marks there, the twisted skin from a radiation blast. We learned to watch over ourselves. The alien stared at his arm like it was something from a nightmare. In their world, maybe it was. They had never had to heal from wounds that divine power could not prevent. They had never had to fight battles that their gods would not win for them. How did you survive? Elder Zixona whispered. Jake rolled his sleeve back down and smiled. It was not a happy smile, but it was not sad either. It was the smile of someone who had seen the worst the universe could offer and was still here to talk about it. We learned that if no one else was going to save us, he said, we would have to save ourselves. The dining hall stayed quiet for a long time after Jake spoke. The aliens looked at each other with expressions he had never seen before. It was like they were trying to solve a puzzle that had no answer. Commander Lisa Hayes stepped forward from where she had been waiting near the wall. She was shorter than Jake, with brown hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was clean, but showed the same kind of wear that came from real use. A thin scar ran across her left hand where shrapnel had cut her during the Battle of Europa. May I show them something, Captain? She asked. Jake nodded. Lisa pulled out a small device and pressed a button. The air above the table shimmered, and suddenly they were looking at images that hung in space like ghosts. The first image showed Earth from space. It looked blue and beautiful, but Jake knew the aliens could not see what he could see. They could not see the radiation scars from the nuclear wars. They could not see the dead zones where nothing grew anymore. They could not see the cities that had been rebuilt 3 or 4 times after being destroyed. This is our world, Lisa said. Her voice was calm and clear. For most species, this would be where their gods live, where divine power keeps everything safe and peaceful. The image changed to show a battle scene. Human soldiers fighting against creatures that looked like they were made of living darkness. The humans had crude weapons compared to what the aliens used, but they fought with a desperate courage that made several of the council members look away. This was the Void Crawler War, Lisa said. It lasted 7 years. The creatures came from outside normal space and wanted to eat everything they could find. Every human world was attacked. Billions died. Elder Zixona made a sound like wind through broken glass. But where were your gods? Why did they not stop this? That is what we asked, Jake said. We prayed and we begged and we screamed at the sky, but the sky was silent. The image changed again. Now it showed humans working together to build huge weapons, space stations, and ships. They worked without divine guidance, using only their own minds and hands. So we stopped waiting for help that was never going to come, Lisa said. We built quantum barriers that could keep the creatures out. We developed weapons that could hurt them. We learned to fight monsters that your gods never let you see. Director Kethlin raised one of his 4 hands. But surely you must have some divine protection, some power watching over you. How else could you have survived so many trials? Jake laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Director, let me tell you about our trials. Lisa changed the images, again. Now they showed scenes of human history that made the aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. Wars where millions died. Plagues that wiped out whole cities. Natural disasters that should have ended human civilization. The Yellowstone eruption of 2157, Jake said, pointing at an image of a world covered in ash. It blocked out the sun for 3 years. Most of Earth became uninhabitable. Any other species would have prayed for their gods to fix it. What did humans do? Beltar asked. His crystal body was dim with worry. We dug, Lisa said simply. We built underground cities. We developed machines that could clean the air. We learned to grow food without sunlight. We saved ourselves because there was no one else to do it. The images kept changing, showing one disaster after another. Each time, humans faced the crisis, alone. Each time they found a way to survive through their own efforts. The Titan Mining Rebellion, Jake said as the image showed space battles around Saturn's moon. Pirates tried to take our mining stations. No gods came to help us. We fought them off with mining equipment and cargo ships. The Mars Plague, Lisa added. The image showed a city under quarantine domes, a disease that killed 90% of everyone it infected. We did not pray for a cure. We worked until we found one ourselves. General Fixtar leaned forward. But surely some higher power guided your scientists, gave them inspiration, showed them the way. No, Jake said firmly. Every cure, every solution, every breakthrough came from human minds working human problems. We failed a lot. We lost people. We made mistakes. But we kept trying because giving up meant dying. The images stopped and the room fell quiet again. Jake could see that the aliens were struggling to understand. In their experience, gods were real and active powers that helped their people. The idea of a species that had never received such help was like trying to imagine a world without gravity. How are you even still alive? Elder Zixona whispered. Because we had to be, Jake said. Every generation that survived was a little tougher than the one before. Every disaster we lived through taught us something new. Every war we fought made us better at protecting ourselves. Lisa pulled out another device. This one showed numbers and charts that floated in the air. Human stress tolerance is 3 times higher than the next closest species. Our adaptation rate is 5 times faster. Our problem-solving under pressure is off the charts compared to everyone else. But why? Director Kethelin asked. What makes you so different? Jake stood up and rolled up both sleeves. His arms were covered in scars from a dozen different battles and accidents. Burns from plasma fire, cuts from metal shrapnel, radiation, marks from reactor leaks. Each one told a story of survival. Because your gods gave you paradise, he said. Ours gave us nothing but silence. So we learned to make our own paradise. We learned to be our own gods. The aliens stared at him like he had said something impossible. Maybe in their world it was impossible. They had never had to imagine a universe where divine power did not care about their suffering. You became strong because you had to, Veltar said slowly, like he was working out a difficult math problem. That is right, Lisa said. While your species were being guided and protected, humans were being tested by reality itself. Every day was a fight to survive. Every problem was something we had to solve ourselves. Jake sat back down and looked around the table. I know this is hard to understand. You have always had help from powers greater than yourselves. But imagine if that help had never come. Imagine if you had to face every crisis, every disaster, every enemy with nothing but your own strength and cleverness. We would have died, General Fixtar said quietly. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe you would have become something harder to kill, something that could not be broken by any disaster, something that could protect others because you learned to protect yourselves. Elder Zixona was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was very soft. You are saying that abandonment made you stronger than protection ever could. Jake nodded. That is exactly what I am saying. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different. The aliens were not just confused anymore. They were beginning to understand something that frightened them. They were beginning to see that their divine protection might have made them weak in ways they had never considered, and they were beginning to realize that the scarred humans sitting with them might be the strongest beings they had ever met. Jake could see that the aliens still did not fully believe what they were hearing. Their faces showed confusion and doubt. It was one thing to hear about human struggles, but another thing to truly understand what those struggles meant. Let me show you something else, Jake said. He pressed a button on his communication device. Rick, are you there? The air above the table shimmered again and a hologram appeared. It showed a man with sandy hair and a face that looked like it had been through a meat grinder. Captain Rick Sullivan had scars that made Jake look unmarked. His left eye was artificial, glowing with a soft blue light. Half of his jaw was metal and his neck was covered with burn marks that looked like someone had tried to melt him. Hey, Jake, Rick said, his voice slightly mechanical because of the artificial parts. How are the talks going? I am trying to explain to our new friends what humans have been through, Jake said. Can you tell them about the void crawlers? Rick's face got serious. Even through the hologram, the aliens could see the pain in his expression. The void crawlers were the worst thing we ever faced. They came from outside normal space, places where physics work differently. They ate energy, matter, everything they could touch. Elder Zixona leaned forward. We have never heard of such creatures. Because your gods kept them away from you, Rick said. But Earth had no protection. They hit our outer colonies first. Entire planets just gone. Not destroyed. Gone. Like they had never existed. The hologram changed to show Rick's memory of the war. Space battles where human ships fought against things that looked like living holes in reality. The creatures moved wrong, bent light around them, and made sounds that hurt to hear even through recordings. We lost a lot of good people, Rick said. But we learned things too. We figured out that quantum barriers could keep them out if you built them right. We developed weapons that could hurt them by making small tears in spacetime. Director Kethelin made a noise of amazement. You developed quantum technology during a war, without divine guidance? We had to, Rick said simply. It was that or watch them eat the galaxy. Took us 7 years, but we drove them back into whatever dark space they came from. Jake nodded. Rick's colony was one of the last to be attacked, New Dakota. Tell them about that battle. Rick was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft with old pain. They came at us with everything. Thousands of the creatures, moving like a black tide across space. We had maybe 50 ships and a mining station that was not built for fighting. The hologram showed the battle. Human ships that looked tiny compared to the void crawlers, darting around like angry insects. The space station fired mining lasers that had been turned into weapons. Cargo ships rammed into creatures 10 times their size. We fought for 18 hours straight, Rick said. No sleep, no breaks. People fell asleep at their weapons and kept fighting in their dreams. We lost 30 ships and half the station. How did you win? General Fixtar asked. Rick smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We did not try to win. We just tried not to lose for long enough to make them go away. When you cannot be stronger than your enemy, you have to be more stubborn. The hologram faded, and Rick looked directly at the alien council members. The technology we developed during that war is what keeps most of the galaxy safe now. The quantum barriers protect 12 different species. The weapons help keep pirates and raiders away from trade routes, and you did this all without divine help, Veltar said. It was not a question anymore. We did it because we had no divine help, Rick said. When you know no one is coming to save you, you get very creative about saving yourself. The hologram disappeared and Jake turned to Lisa. Show them the records from the Yellowstone crisis. Lisa pulled up new images. These showed Earth during the supervolcano eruption that had nearly ended human civilization. The sky was black with ash. Cities were buried under gray snow. Millions of people were crowded into underground shelters. This happened in 2157, Lisa said. The eruption put so much ash in the air that global temperatures dropped by 15 degrees. Crops failed everywhere. Most of the surface became uninhabitable. Dr. Amy Foster stepped forward from where she had been standing with the other human delegation members. She was a small woman with gray hair and gentle eyes, but her hands were scarred from years of dangerous research. I was there, Amy said. I was just a graduate student, but I remember the panic. People thought it was the end of the world. And maybe it should have been. What did you do? Elder Zixona asked. We moved underground, Amy said. Every major city started digging. We built entire civilizations beneath the surface. We developed atmospheric processors that could clean the air. We created artificial sunlight for growing food. We designed closed-loop life support systems that could keep millions of people alive for years. The images showed the underground cities. They were not pretty like the alien structures, but they were functional. Humans working together to build a new way of life when their old one was destroyed. It took 3 years for the ash to clear enough for us to return to the surface, Amy said. By then we had learned things about survival that no other species has ever needed to know. And during all this time, you received no divine assistance? Director Kethlin asked. Amy laughed, but it was not bitter. We prayed, we begged, we offered everything we had to any power that might be listening, but the only voices that answered were our own. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see the perfect city of Zenth Prime. Everything was clean and beautiful and peaceful. No scars, no damage, no signs that bad things had ever happened here. Every species in this council has stories of divine intervention, he said, without turning around. Times when their gods saved them from disaster, guided them to solutions, protected them from harm. Humans have those stories too, but ours are different. How are they different? Veltar asked. Jake turned back to face them. In our stories, we are the gods. The words hit the council members like a physical blow. Several of them made sounds of shock or disbelief. The idea that any species could claim such a thing was almost beyond their understanding. Not literally, Lisa said quickly. But when you are the only power in the universe that cares whether your species lives or dies, you have to become godlike in your determination to survive. Amy nodded. We learned to reshape worlds when they became uninhabitable. We learned to cure diseases that should have killed us all. We learned to fight enemies that should have been impossible to defeat. We did these things not because we were chosen or blessed, but because we chose to do them ourselves. Every scar on every human tells the same story, Jake said. We were hurt, but we healed. We were broken, but we rebuilt. We were abandoned, but we found each other. And every time we survived something that should have killed us, we became a little harder to kill. General Fixtar was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Your strength comes from your suffering. Our strength comes from refusing to let suffering break us, Jake corrected. Pain can make you weak if you let it, but if you use it as a teacher instead of a master, it can make you stronger than you ever imagined. Elder Zixona looked around the table at her fellow council members. I think, she said slowly, we may have misunderstood what we were dealing with when we invited humans to join us. How so? Jake asked. We thought we were meeting a primitive species that needed our guidance, she said. Instead, we may have found the strongest species in the galaxy. Jake smiled, and for the first time since arriving on Zenth Prime, it was a completely happy expression. Now you are beginning to understand. Elder Zixona stood up from her seat, and the room fell silent. Her misty form seemed to grow larger and more solid as she prepared to speak. When she did, her voice carried the weight of ancient authority. Captain Morrison, she said, your words are challenging to accept. You claim that your species has become strong through abandonment and suffering. But words are easy. Anyone can claim to be mighty. Jake felt the mood in the room shift. The curiosity and shock were being replaced by something else. Doubt, suspicion, the kind of careful judgment that came before a test. What are you suggesting? Jake asked. The Trials of Ascension, Elder Zixona said. They are ancient challenges that determine whether a species is ready to join the Galactic Council. They test wisdom, courage, and the ability to face the unknown. Director Kethlin looked uncomfortable. Elder, no species has attempted the trials without divine guidance in over 1,000 years. It would be dangerous. Exactly, Elder Zixona said. If humans are truly as strong as they claim, they should have no problem with challenges that other species face with godly help. Jake looked at Lisa, who gave him a small nod. They had talked about this possibility during the trip to Zenth Prime. The Council might want proof of human capabilities beyond just stories and scars. What do the trials involve? Jake asked. General Fixtar activated a holographic display. 3 images appeared in the air above the table. The first showed a region of space that looked completely black with no stars or light anywhere. The second showed complex mathematical equations floating in a spiral pattern. The third showed a simple mirror that somehow looked terrifying. 3 tests, General Fixtar explained. First, the null storm. It is a region of space where technology fails and normal physics do not work. Survival requires pure wit and will. Jake studied the image. He had heard of such places during his military service, dead zones where ships went dark, and crews had to rely on backup systems and manual controls. Second, the paradox of the dying star, General Fixtar continued. A mathematical puzzle that determines how to save a collapsing star system. It requires both genius and the wisdom to use knowledge properly. Lisa leaned forward to look at the equations. They hurt to look at, twisting in ways that made her eyes water. But she had seen similar problems before during her engineering training. Third, the mirror of truth, General Fixtar finished. It shows beings their deepest fears and failures. Many who face it are broken by what they see. Others emerge with greater understanding of themselves. Elder Zixona watched Jake carefully. Each trial must be completed by representatives of the species seeking membership. Failure in anyone means rejection from the Council. Jake did not hesitate. We accept. The words surprised even Lisa. She had expected Jake to ask for time to consider or to request more details. But she should have known better. Humans did not back down from challenges, especially when their strength was being questioned. You may choose a team, Veltar said. Most species send their wisest leaders and most powerful warriors. I will need volunteers from the human fleet, Jake said. People who have been through the worst and come out stronger. Within an hour, 5 more humans had been transported to Zenth Prime. Marine Sergeant Ben Parker, who had fought in the Voidcrawler War and lost his left arm to a creature's bite. Engineer Kate Morgan, who had survived 3 different ship explosions and could fix anything with spare parts and determination. Dr. Steve Collins, a physicist who had been part of the team that developed the quantum barriers. Mathematician Helen Wright, who had solved problems that had stumped human computers. And pilot Sam Torres, who had flown rescue missions into some of the most dangerous regions of space. Each of them carried scars. Each of them had stories of survival that would have impressed other humans. But to the aliens watching, they just looked like more damaged beings who should have been healed long ago. Are you certain about this? Veltar asked as they prepared to leave for the first trial. The Null Storm has claimed ships from species with powerful divine protection. Jake looked at his team. They were checking their equipment and making final preparations. None of them looked worried. They looked like people getting ready for another day at a difficult job. We are certain, Jake said. The trip to the Null Storm took 6 hours in a Council transport ship. The aliens who came to observe stayed as far from the dead zone as they could. Even their advanced technology began to fail as they approached the edge. This is where we leave you, Elder Zixona said. You will take a basic pod into the storm. If you emerge from the other side, you pass the first trial. Jake looked out at the Null Storm. It was like staring into absolute nothing. No stars, no light, no energy readings at all. Just empty space that somehow felt hungry. How long do we have? Lisa asked. There is no time limit, General Fixtar said. But the longer you stay inside, the more your equipment will fail. Most species complete the transit in 6 hours or die trying. The human team climbed into the test pod. It was a simple craft with basic life support and manual controls. No computers, no advanced sensors, no divine guidance systems, just metal and determination. As they entered the null storm, everything went dark. The lights failed first, then the communication systems, then even the simple instruments. They were flying blind through space that wanted to kill them. "Well," Ben Parker said in the darkness, "this is familiar." Kate Morgan laughed. "Remember the Jupiter rescue mission? We flew for 8 hours with nothing but backup power and a broken compass." "That was in normal space," Sam Torres said as he struggled with the manual controls. "This place is actively trying to hurt us." "Then we treat it like any other hostile environment," Jake said. "We adapt." For the next 4 hours, they worked in the dark. Kate used pieces of broken equipment to build a basic navigation system. Steve calculated their trajectory using only stellar observations from before they entered the storm. Helen created mathematical models of their movement through the dead zone. Ben and Sam took turns at the manual controls, flying by instinct and experience. The aliens watching from outside expected to see panic, expected the humans to break down when their technology failed. Instead, they saw something remarkable. The humans worked together with a coordination that came from shared hardship. They had been in situations like this before. They knew how to function when everything went wrong. When the pod finally emerged from the other side of the null storm, the aliens were waiting with medical teams and emergency equipment. They expected to find broken, traumatized beings who had barely survived. Instead, the humans climbed out of the pod looking tired but satisfied, like workers finishing a difficult shift. "How did you do that?" Veltar asked in amazement. Jake stretched his back and looked around at the starfield on the far side of the storm. "We have been in worse places with less equipment. The null storm was dangerous, but it was not personal. It was just trying to kill us because that is what it does." "Just trying to kill you?" Elder Zixona repeated. "The void crawlers were trying to kill us too," Ben Parker said. "But they were creative about it. They learned from our tactics and adapted their attacks. The null storm is just a natural hazard." Kate Morgan was already examining the pod to see what damage had been done. Most of the electronics are fried, but the basic structure held up well. Good engineering. The aliens stared at the humans like they were looking at creatures from another dimension. These beings had just survived something that challenged protected species, and they were treating it like a routine exercise. "One trial down," Jake said. "What is next?" Elder Zixona looked at her fellow council members. They all had the same expression of stunned disbelief. "The paradox of the dying star," she said finally. Jake nodded. "Lead the way." As they prepared to leave for the second trial, General Fixtar pulled Veltar aside. "They are not what we expected," he said quietly. "No," Veltar agreed. "They are something we never imagined possible." "What if they pass all 3 trials?" Veltar looked at the humans as they checked their equipment and prepared for the next challenge. They moved with the confidence of beings who had faced the universe's worst and survived. "Then we will have learned something important about the value of divine protection," Veltar said, "and perhaps something more important about the power of those who must protect themselves." The second trial took place in a research station orbiting a dying star. The star was massive and red, pulling itself apart as it prepared to collapse into a black hole. According to the calculations, it would go supernova in less than a year, destroying 3 inhabited systems in the process. "The paradox of the dying star," Elder Zixona explained as they stood in the observation deck. "Every species that has attempted this trial received divine inspiration to find the solution. The mathematics are beyond normal understanding." Jake looked out at the dying star. It pulsed with angry red light, and he could feel the heat even through the station's shields. "What happens if we cannot solve it?" "The star dies," General Fixtar said simply. "And with it, billions of lives across 3 systems." Dr. Steve Collins and Helen Wright were already studying the problem. Complex equations filled holographic displays around them, twisting and shifting as they tried to understand the mathematics involved. The numbers described forces that could tear apart solar systems and energies that could power entire civilizations. This is not just about saving the star, Steve said after an hour of study. The solution has to account for gravitational effects, quantum resonance, and something called trans-dimensional energy bleed. Helen nodded, her fingers moving across calculation displays. The math is designed to be impossible without external guidance. No single mind should be able to hold all these variables at once. Good thing we are not using a single mind, Jake said. The human team spread out across the research station. Each person took a different aspect of the problem. Steve focused on the star's internal structure. Helen worked on the mathematical relationships between the different forces. Kate examined the engineering challenges of any potential solution. Ben and Sam studied the tactical aspects of implementing whatever plan they developed. For 18 hours straight, they worked without rest. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans passed information back and forth, building on each other's discoveries, creating solutions through pure collaboration and determination. They have been working for almost a full day, Veltar said to Elder Zixona. Most species would have given up by now. Or received divine inspiration, Elder Zixona replied. But she was watching the humans with growing respect. She had never seen beings work so hard for so long without showing signs of exhaustion. I think I have something, Helen called out during the 17th hour. The team gathered around her display. The equations she had developed were unlike anything the aliens had seen before. Instead of seeking divine guidance or waiting for inspiration, the humans had broken the problem into smaller pieces and solved each one systematically. Controlled antimatter injection, Steve said, studying Helen's work. We create small tears in space-time around the star's core and inject antimatter at precisely calculated intervals. That should destabilize the collapse sequence and force the star into a stable configuration, Helen added. It is dangerous and requires perfect timing, but it should work. Kate was already designing the equipment needed. We can modify the station's particle accelerators to generate the antimatter. The delivery system will be tricky, but I think I can build something. How do you know this will work? Elder Zixona asked. We do not, Jake said honestly. But we used similar techniques during the Jupiter crisis of 2198. Different scale, same basic principles. You have done this before? General Fixtar asked in amazement. Jupiter's core was becoming unstable due to mining operations, Ben explained. We had to either fix it or evacuate the entire system. Since evacuation would have taken decades, we chose to fix it. And it worked? Veltar asked. We are still here, Sam said with a grin. The human team spent the next 6 hours implementing their solution. They worked with the same steady determination they had shown in the Null Storm, treating the dying star like another engineering problem that needed solving. When they finally fired the antimatter injection system, the aliens held their breath. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the star's angry red glow began to shift, becoming steadier and less violent. It is working, Helen said, watching the readings. The collapse sequence is stabilizing. 3 systems just got to keep existing, Kate said, wiping sweat from her forehead. Not bad for a day's work. The aliens stared at the now stable star in complete silence. They had just witnessed something impossible. A species without divine guidance had solved a problem that was designed to require godly intervention. How? Elder Zixona whispered. We treated it like any other problem, Steve said. We broke it down, studied the pieces, and found a solution that worked. But the mathematics alone should have been beyond your capabilities. Helen smiled. Individual human minds have limits, but when we work together, we can solve problems that would break any one of us. We learned that during the darkest times of our history. Jake looked around at the alien council members. Ready for the 3rd trial? The mirror of truth was kept in a chamber deep within the council station. It was a simple piece of reflective metal, but looking at it made everyone in the room feel uncomfortable. The mirror did not just show physical appearance, it showed truth in ways that most beings could not handle. This is the final trial, Elder Zixona said. Each member of your team must look into the mirror and face what they see. Many beings are broken by the experience. What exactly does it show? Lisa asked. Your deepest fears, General Fixtar said, "Your greatest failures, the truth about yourself that you work hardest to hide." Jake stepped forward first. "Then let us get this over with." He looked into the mirror, and his reflection changed. Instead of his scarred face, he saw himself as a young officer, standing over the bodies of soldiers who had died under his command. He saw the faces of people he had failed to save, the battles he had lost, the times when his decisions had led to tragedy. "I see my failures," he said calmly. "And?" Elder Zixona asked. "And I see the price of making hard choices," Jake said. "Every scar tells a story. Every failure taught me something. I would rather be marked by the battles I fought than unmarked by the battles I avoided." One by one, the other humans faced the mirror. Each saw their own version of truth. Ben saw the moment he lost his arm trying to save a fellow Marine. Steve saw the experiments that had failed before he found success. Helen saw the equations she could not solve until other people died waiting for her answers. But none of them broke. None of them ran from what they saw. They looked at their failures and their fears and accepted them as part of who they were. "I do not understand," Veltar said. "The mirror should have shown you things that would destroy your sense of self." "It did," Kate said. "It showed me every time I built something that failed. Every person who died because my engineering was not good enough." "Then why are you not broken?" Kate smiled. "Because those failures taught me how to build things that work. Every mistake made me better at saving lives." Elder Zixona looked at the humans with something approaching awe. "You see your failures as achievements. We see our failures as learning experiences," Jake corrected. "In a universe where no one is coming to save you, every mistake that does not kill you makes you stronger." The trials were over. The human team had passed all 3 tests, not through divine guidance or supernatural strength, but through the simple determination to keep going no matter what the universe threw at them. As they stood in the council chambers waiting for the final judgment, Elder Zixona spoke for all the alien species. "We have learned something today," she said. "We thought divine protection was the greatest gift a species could receive. But perhaps we were wrong." "How so?" Jake asked. "Divine protection keeps a species safe," she said. "But abandonment makes a species strong. And in a universe full of dangers we have never imagined, strength may be more valuable than safety." The council voted unanimously, not just to accept humanity as members, but to name them as the galaxy's first guardians, protectors of worlds whose gods might one day look away. As Jake accepted the honor, he touched one of his scars and thought about the question that had started everything. They had asked about his marks, and he had told them the truth. They came from wars the gods ignored, but standing in the council chambers surrounded by beings who were finally beginning to understand what humans had become, Jake realized something important. Maybe the gods had not ignored those wars. Maybe they had just been smart enough to let humans fight them alone, knowing that the struggle would create something the galaxy had never seen before, something unbreakable, something that could protect others because it had learned to protect itself. Jake looked around at the alien faces, all watching him with new respect and understanding. "We accept the role of guardians," he said. "And we promise that no world under our protection will ever have to face the darkness alone." Elder Zixona bowed her misty head. "Thank you, Guardian Morrison. We are honored to have found beings strong enough to stand between the light and the dark." Jake smiled, and for the first time since arriving on Zenth Prime, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The scars that had marked him as different now marked him as exactly what the galaxy needed. Someone who had been forged in fire and refused to break.